Do you want to know the difference between the most successful business leaders and firm owners and the ones that are, let's say, the least successful? There's a lot of differences, and often in these vlogs we've talked about them, but I want to talk about the differences in decision making and differences in judgment. Because as a business leader, you already know this, we are not in the time-based economy, we are in the results-based economy. So as a leader, you are paid for your judgment, not your time. So literally the differences between two firm owners is in the differences in the decisions that they make and how they grow their firm, and whether they invest in their infrastructure, whether they invest in their marketing. What is a right decision, what is a wrong decision, and oftentimes that could be defined as, does it support moving, making forward progress towards your vision and your goals? And a good decision does, a bad decision does not. But when we talk about judgment, how do you actually improve judgment? And it was interesting because I read an article, they actually talked about how Jeff Bezos of Amazon made his highest stakes decisions. And what are some of the things that he did? As I'm sure you're familiar with Jeff Bezos, has made a series of very good decisions that have really grown Amazon over the years and have made them basically the online store for everything. And then even the other business ventures that he's involved in. So when we talk about how to improve judgment, here's what Jeff Bezos does, right? So one, he spoke about handling his biggest decisions early in the day. So like 10 a.m., or even earlier at times, because when you get later in the day, let's say you've got less energy, you can be compromised, whatever that might be, that's not the best time to make the biggest decisions. And when we say big decisions, these are ones that either carry the most leverage, whether they can impact the most people in your organization, your clients, and so on. They may have the greatest investment required, that may have, let's say, the greatest probability of upside, but also carry great downside risk. So you want to make sure you're in a good headspace when you're making decisions like that, especially ones that have the largest leverage. Now, how do you get into a good headspace? Well, for one, Jeff Bezos talked about the fact that he won't even make any high stake decisions unless he's well rested, at least 8 hours of sleep, that he's exercising, so he'll think better, his mood's better, you've got more energy. So the importance of being in a good headspace when making decisions can make you much more, not only just effective, but much more proactive. Because if decision fatigue is real. If you've made 100 decisions throughout the day and then you've got the biggest one you need to make at the end of the day and you're tired and exhausted and you're on 4 hours of sleep, you may be better off sleeping on it, waking up in the morning and then thinking it through when you're in a better headspace and better rested. And then the other big thing, and we talk about this all the time, is that when you're making a big decision, think at least 3 years out. Does that decision support your long-term vision? Because especially during COVID times, we saw people make a lot of fear-based reactive decisions that were working directly against their long-term vision. So if your long-term vision is you want to impact more people in your community, you want to grow your team, you want to be, let's say, I want to grow revenue, you want to increase your average case values, then making decisions like dialing back marketing, laying off team members or furloughing staff, shutting down the office, all those different things may not be, they may actually be directly opposed to what that long-term vision is. And if you're fully committed to it, then you'll always find a way to make sure your decisions do support that. And then, in terms of decision making, this is a topic that I'm very passionate about, just because we all have the same number of days and hours in a year, and yet we can have drastically different outcomes. And the primary difference comes down to decision making. So then it comes down to, well, what if you don't have enough information to make a decision? If that's the case, what I do is I always bring in, someone who is an expert in that space, whether it's somebody on our team or someone that I, reach out to externally, or someone who has made a decision like the one I'm making before. This was something we thought about when we were buying an office building. I'd never bought an office building. I wanted to speak to people who had, what their experience was, recommendations they had, and then also on the financial aspects of it, from a tax standpoint, I wanted to learn those things, and I didn't previously know those things. So I spoke to people who did have that information, so that, that helped me make that decision. And the final thing I'll say on this note is just that if you have at least, let's say, 80% of the information you need to make a decision, you really should weigh the value of the additional time in delaying making that decision. Because you may say, okay, well, I have 80%, but I don't have 100%. But let's say it will take you another several months to get that additional 20%, but it may not actually even change the decision. So when growing a business, the speed of your decision making and your decisiveness is one of the biggest drivers of growth. The pace at which you can make decisions. If it takes you 3 months to make a decision, well, then you won't be able to move to that next step until 3 months later. But if you can make decisions, let's say in a day or in a week, think about how much forward progress you can make getting things off the ground, getting ideas and initiatives off the ground. So in summary, just recognize as a leader that you're paid on your judgment, not your time. And it really pays to have good judgment. So put yourself in a position to succeed and to be in a good headspace when making those decisions.